So hi everyone. I'm Michael Wayne. This is another of our Anadea, Judith, and I's Voices for the Future program. Hi, Anadea.
Hello, Michael.
And today we're honored to have Loch Kelly with us. And hi, Loch.
Hi, Michael. Hi, Anadea. Great to be here with you.
Really pleased to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll start. I'll read Loch's bio, and then we'll go away. And I think we'll all be in for a very great conversation with Loch. So Loch Kelly, who has a master's in divinity and is a licensed social worker, is the award-winning author of 2 books. One is, his most recent is The Way of Effortless Mindfulness, and the other is Shift into Freedom. He's a licensed psychotherapist and recognized leader in the field of meditation and awakening, and is the founder and guiding teacher of the nonprofit Effortless Mindfulness Institute. Loch is a graduate from Columbia University, where he received a fellowship to study meditation and healing in Sri Lanka, India, and Nepal, and has collaborated with neuroscientists at Yale, UPenn, and NYU in the study of how awareness training can enhance compassion and well-being. Loch, who is known for his warm sense of humor and simple methods of helping people immediately glimpse of consciousness, awake consciousness, lives in upstate New York with his wife Paige and cat, and their cat Duffy. And Loch has a new mobile meditation platform with daily glimpses, in-depth programs, and community support. And that's at lochkelly.org/EM. And as I said, I'll put the link in the chat box along the way. So Loch, welcome. So you have a really fascinating background in both science and spirituality, and have worked with people along the way. How did you, just as a background question, how did you find your way to the path you're on in terms of the merge of science and spirituality, consciousness and awakening?
Yeah, I mean, there's the very short, the medium, and the long version. And, you know, I'm sure as people listening know, as you kind of look back, you kind of say like, oh, right. Oh, that led to that. Oh, that's why I did that. And that revealed that. And I had that experience. I didn't know what it was, but it, you know, so there were a lot of little experiences from early on, some of which I talk about in my book. But I would say I had certain shifts of consciousness as a kid, and some of them came interestingly in sports. So I would have this experience of going into the zone or being in a flow state or something like that, and I started to think, well, how do you get in there intentionally? And I started to do these kind of practices. One which I do now started when I heard a sportscaster on TV say about a football quarterback, he's got eyes in the back of his head. Mm-hmm. He knows what's happening. So I thought, oh, okay, I kind of know what that is. It's not like you see anything behind you, but you take your awareness and you kind of open your peripheral vision, and then you just kind of continue around. So you feel like, then you drop into your body and you feel like a cat. And anything that happens, you kind of respond, you know, in a way that you don't have to think about thinking. And so that so I was explaining this at one of my sports events where I was playing ice hockey goalie to my friend, who said, how did you do that? And I said, you really want to know? And I kind of said that thing, and he was like, oh, cool. And he walked away. But then a senior on the team came in the next practice and threw a book at me, which was Zen and the Art of Archery. He said, here, kid, read this. And so that was like, I was 14, and I started like, wow, there's people who really value this. This must be, and the funny thought I had was, this must be what adults talk about when they have their free time. And I soon realized they don't talk about this at all.
But the 14-year-old thought that.
The 14-year-old thought, this is, oh, I see, this is what, it's going to get better. It's going to, but so I decided as an adult to start talking about it.
Great, great. So I understand that you talk about effortless mindfulness.
Yeah.
And is that any different from the whole mindfulness movement and, what we call mindfulness meditation that's being taught all over?
It is, yes. So
And in what way?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to go start to do, I did TM at 16, and then I did, I did different contemplative practices, did Zen in college up in Rochester with this guy, Philip Kapleau. And then I decided to go to graduate school in psychology and spirituality at Columbia, and got a fellowship to go to Sri Lanka. Did what's called, more classical mindfulness of Vipassana, insight meditation, for 9 months, and really enjoyed it. And then went up through India to Nepal and ended up meeting somebody in the Tibetan tradition called Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche. And he just gave this little talk, and then gave what he called a pointing out instruction of sending awareness and having awareness look back through who sent it. And all of a sudden I just started laughing and crying and saying like, well, this is now I'm feeling the same way as at the end of a 10-day retreat, in 5 minutes, like, except my eyes are open and I'm talking and I'm feeling calm but joyous and connected. And what's this? And Tulku Urgyen, in that tradition, they say there's two kinds of mindfulness: deliberate mindfulness and effortless mindfulness. And effortless mindfulness isn't focusing attention on objects or contents of consciousness, but it is literally making the next move, which is having awareness look back through the meditator to see what's already aware effortlessly, that's equally arising as energy and embodied, interconnected with everyone. So it's actually a direct way to experience a kind of being in the zone or being in the flow. And it's done, in small glimpses rather than, thinking that you can sustain it immediately because the other habits are stronger. But that would be the difference, is rather than concentrating the small mind and looking at the contents of consciousness, you open or relax or rest or let go or surrender. But what surrenders is awareness. It's not your will, it's not thought, it's not effort. It's actually, you end up feeling what it actually, how different it is. And then it surrenders into, or lets go into, the already awake, effortless awareness that you can be mindful from, that isn't a detached witness, but is kind of an embodied drop down from head to heart, mind, and open, interconnected. So that's a quick little summary of the
Okay.
Yeah. And you call that a glimpse? Is that the term
Yeah.
you use?
I call it a glimpse because it's not a meditation state. In other words, you're not kind of creating a calm state by watching your breath. And I know the neuroscience of the one-pointed attention and what state that creates, but it's the shift of awareness gives you a glimpse into your already awake consciousness that's already maintaining itself. And then other states of mind come and go to this, which is the ground or the nature of mind.
Mhm.
So can you give us a taste of this glimpse? Can you lead us on a little practice?
Sure, sure. We might as well dive right into the.
Sure. Take it out of the theoretical and into the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
There's certainly I've written two books about it and have all these glimpses. I'll say that what I'm doing and is creating this these series of glimpses, and I realize that people have different learning styles of glimpsing and meditating, and they have certain blocks to it. So more kinesthetic or physical people, more energetic, more mental starting points, more emotional. So I create these glimpses that go in what I call different doors to get to the same place, and then kind of unfold in a way that kind of goes through a few steps of consciousness rather than stopping at a mindful witness or witness consciousness or pure awareness or other halfway points. So the premise is that this is a natural condition that's already installed operating system of awake consciousness, but developmentally, you could say, we go from psychologically being dependent or being in this primary process, childlike thinking where we don't have thoughts, and then we spend most of our time in school developing, a thinker and an ego, and we end up saying, I think, therefore I am, which is kind of we think is the culmination of development. And what this is saying is that thinking is very important, but in Buddhism, thinking is considered the sixth sense. So the regular five senses, and then thinking is the sixth sense. Who do they appear to? They don't wrap around and appear to a thinker or a doer. They appear to this already awake, embodied, interconnected consciousness. And so the setup for this little glimpse is just to say that in this current state of consciousness, we have this thought going to thought, creating this small separate sense of self that if you actually feel it, it kind of feels like it's sitting in the middle of your head, looking out of your eyes, and that it's an ego function that's become an ego identity. So we're just going to let it be a function. And right now it's a doer that's survival oriented. So it's trying to solve problems. What's happening in there? What's happening out there? Is there a problem out there? Is there a problem in here? It's scanning. And then if the doer or thinker can relax just for a moment, that the premise is behind it is this more open mind, an open heart, alert, non-thought based, embodied presence. So the simple first inquiry style glimpse is simply to start with understanding the inquiry, which is what's here now when there's no problem to solve. So just first understanding the words, and some people it's like immediate, and then let the problem solver relax, and then kind of rest back or feel or sense when you're not aware from the problem solver, what does this feel like? And then what's it like to be aware of it? And then what's it like to rest as it, as this? And then as this more alert awareness, is there a boundary? Is thought necessary to be alert and to respond? And then what's it like as this awareness? What's the relationship to sensation, vibration, energy, your body, and the world? Can everything be welcome and included, pleasant and unpleasant, outside and responding to whatever is needed in the now?
Mhm.
So is that the process that we're doing right now? Or, I mean,
Yeah, that did you do that? Did you, I'll ask you. That's the process I was doing.
yeah, yeah. No, I was listening to the explanation and then, oh, to go into it.
So then let's go back into it. So again,
Yeah.
it's literally, and the one I did is literally takes you through, like 5 moves of awareness. So the first one is starting with your mind to understand the words. What is here now when there's no problem to solve? So
Right.
then the first instruction would be like, okay, that's not a question for your mind or your ego or memory or effort. That's just to understand it. Now, what happens if the problem solver is a pattern that can relax? Then what's aware? What does it feel like? And where are you aware from? And what's this that's open yet not looking to thought to be alive, to be the am, I think, therefore I am. And then the rest, to be aware of it as if it's still an object, what's here. And then what's it like to actually be it or rest at? What if it was not a meditation state or a temporary? What if it was actually the ground? And then to include everything that comes and goes, not as if it comes and goes through it, which is the ultimate normal meditation state, as if you're the sky and things come through it, but it's more ocean and wave. Now, as the ocean of awareness, can you feel the energy of your body? So some people start to feel very sparkly or a little kundalini or more, just relaxed or in a flow or in the zone. So you'll start to feel, and then others will feel like you've dropped the center from head to embodiment or to heart space.
Yeah. So ultimately, Locke, with what you teach and write about is it's I feel almost like it's an oxymoron to say the goal if we're talking about effortless, but you talk a lot about awakening.
Yeah.
And you've talked about awareness awakening. Is that the term you use?
Yeah.
Awake awareness. And I know you've said that awakening is learnable. I'm quoting you, is learnable and available as the next natural stage of human development. So is this exercise in glimpsing part of that awake awareness, that path?
Yeah. So the sense of kind of studying many different traditions throughout the wisdom traditions, what is this that's so valued in all these cultures throughout history? It's called something like awakening, right? Or so, from more theistic, it's more like unity or union with the divine or something like that, but it creates Christ consciousness or freedom from a small sense of self in Buddhism. So it's awakening from a contracted identity that feels separate from others and is kind of self-referencing and feeling like it suffers from being so self-conscious and creates worry and paranoia and fear and stress. So the premise is that all that is included. We're awakening from it, but we're not fighting the ego. We're not killing the ego. We're not getting rid of that self. We're just awakening from that as the central sense of who I am and the central dimension of mind where we're aware from. So I use awareness as awake awareness as the non-thought based, non-thought centered intelligence. That it's more awareness based, and then you can move your hand from there, or you can use thought, can flow as kind of the leaves of the tree and the roots of awareness. So that awakening is kind of a waking up, is kind of like growing up, in that it seems that it can develop into a more stable stage rather than just a state. So,
So in your practice, and how long have you been practicing meditation?
so I guess since I was, 14 or something. Yeah. So
Okay. So in your practice, how much can you sustain that state in your day-to-day life, your doing life?
Yeah.
It's one thing to go to that state while you're in meditation, and it's another thing to come out of meditation and cook breakfast or, go to work or whatever you do. And dovetailing with that, how has it changed your everyday life?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just say before I answer that, is the other dimension besides the neuroscience and the wisdom traditions is the psychology. So I started doing these 2 degrees at the same time. So a little less time, but a good, 40 years of psychotherapy, and waking up and growing up being a way to deal with what gets triggered. So when the awake consciousness meets the everyday consciousness and meets the unconscious, meets the conscious. So generally speaking, it's pretty much become, the awake consciousness has become primarily my baseline.
Mm-hmm.
So I wake up, my wife says, "You're smiling in your sleep. What are you doing?" So I'm like even doing practice while I'm asleep, and I wake up and I can feel during the day when I get triggered. I can just feel when something happens and it feels like fingernails on a chalkboard. It just isn't like, there was a progression, almost like a stage of development, like going through adolescence to young adulthood to adulthood, that you just grow, the awakening becomes more natural. So that when something, kind of a part of me, which is what more the psychological language, gets triggered, that has an attitude or a behavior, I don't just make it go away. I literally just kind of invite it in,
Mm-hmm.
to be in dialogue and assume it has something to say. But the key is, what that means is not trying to get rid of feelings and thoughts and emotions and subpersonalities, and but it's a matter of who or what is aware of them,
Mm-hmm.
and what's the relationship to them. So you can be aware of them, but be a detached witness, which is a lot of the more mindful cognitive therapy, or you can do some spiritual techniques to make them dissolve, but actually my experience is they just go underground and they'll come back again. So you just invite them in and see what they have to say, and let them know they're part of the team, and then start to find a way to unburden them from some of their secondary suffering. So you don't like get rid of them or fix them or stop sadness or even, anger in its form of aggression being, hey, what's going on there?
Right.
So yeah, so that's so yeah, and there's many other people I know and students, and who it's become more and more of a baseline over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Loch, you came, as you talked about your sports background or playing, and so is the in sports to talk about the zone or flow state. So is the idea of flow state also part of what you like what Anna Day is saying? How do you carry this into life? So flow state part of that, carrying this into life.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm I'm adding it more and being more intentional to use that whole, Csikszentmihalyi. I don't know if people know the researcher who wrote about flow state and gives these 8 pointers of when people are in the flow. And the interesting thing is he studied, athletes and musicians, which are the ones that are often most known, like a violinist who's in an orchestra and then just doesn't have to think about what they're playing and actually just goes into the, being communing with everyone else, or an athlete playing or something like that. But he studied middle managers at work and other people like more absorbed flow state of like scientists who would go like into this absorbed zone. But the feeling that has the same thing, because his markers are that you feel like you're not in your ego's dropped away. You feel a sense of joy in whatever you're doing. You feel a connection to the environment. Time slows down and you feel like you're in the now. So that is an active off the cushion description of many of the markers. I call it more compassionate flow consciousness rather than a flow state, because it doesn't often have to have heart, because it's more functional. High functional flow is usually described as, some doing a task well and being joyful. But there's a compassionate flow feels a little more like you have a heart quality to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you had the Effortless Mindfulness Institute, but then you also had a Heart Institute, looking down to see what it was called.
Open-hearted awareness, yeah.
Open-hearted awareness, which is your current one now.
It's Effortless Mindfulness Institute. It's just a way of making it simpler terms. I still have open-hearted awareness as one of the markers of the unfolding of awakening, but I just renamed the institute because I was getting well, I have this book called Effortless Mindfulness, this institute called Open-Hearted Awareness. So just like, okay, let's just start with a door, make the door simple.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, I think it's great that you put so much emphasis on awakening or awake awareness, that concept, because at one time the whole concept of awakening was something only religious mystics or certain people who were called to follow that path. But what you're saying, it's now awakening is something that's possible for everyone. You don't have to be go in an order or a mystic's path, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to define it in a way that is like a middle stage. It's not just the early stage of awakening, but it is a kind of a middle stage where you're more open-hearted. I mean, I'll just say the awake awareness part is one of the keys, because it's known in Hinduism as Turiya, and in Tibetan Buddhism as Rigpa. But what it is that movement from thought-based consciousness to awareness that isn't just I am aware of, and it's not just a blank state. It literally is the primary ground from which thought comes. And so it's an awake, non-thought-based alertness which happens in a flow state, is that all the information and what's called implicit memory is stored as programs, but you don't need to be looking at the pop-ups and having all the programs running. They're all in there, and you're just clear.
Yeah.
that is like an important, uh, simple but kind of advanced, because it's not talked about in basic mindfulness. It's not talked about it that much in yoga. It's not talked about that much, but it's essentially the line in order to not just, surrender or let go and hope it arise, but to shift or unhook into, and then feel that you are in the awake awareness, and then you're aware from it, so that those extra three moves, of recognition, what's called recognition to realization, start to happen. And so it is a kind of upgrading of an already installed. So that's the paradox, that you're not doing it because it's already installed. So it's effortlessly already here, but you have to kind of get on board and get in the river that's flowing to the ocean, but you got to get in and do a little steering and recognizing of how it's unfolding.
Mhm. Yeah, Eric Jans is a systems theorist. He's not alive anymore, that I really like. And he talks about three levels of thinking or experiencing. One is the rational, which is like measuring the river and the temperature and how much water goes by and how many fish are in it. But there's a point when you do that enough, you fall in the river. And then it's an entirely different experience. You're in the river and it's no longer, oh, this is 55 degrees and it's going, you know, 5 miles an hour. It's like, oh my God, I'm in the river. And that's it's a different level that we jump into.
Yes. And so having that support, or that getting to know. So if I do I just did a 5-day retreat in California. So I spend the first day and a half, 2 days, introducing people to awake awareness, and, sometimes use the term self with a capital S, that has awake awareness that you're aware from and as, and then see how you feel toward your body and the different subpersonalities, parts of you. So then that's where the compassion starts. Well, as the awake awareness, how do you feel toward the worried part of the anxious part of you? And then you start saying, oh, well, I feel compassion. I feel care, and then all of a sudden you are the awareness-based, compassionate self toward the parts of you that are human, that are the same as in everyone. So you're not like getting rid of or whitewashing, the human, and like, I am awake. Would you like some tea? All tea is the same.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that reminds me of another quote on your website that you said about awakening. You said, awakening is not about trying to transcend our humanity, but about showing up fully with our quirks and struggles.
Mm-hmm.
So it's being a better version of yourself in
Yeah.
a way. That's what you're saying. You're trying to be who you are with all the possible neuroses, but be more aware with it. Or I'll let you say more on that.
Yeah. So I think that, there's kind of these couple little distinctions that aren't meant to be intellectual or esoteric, but they're what move it from basic mindfulness, or most like witness consciousness, and so rather than being a better version of, like being more aware, you literally are shifting out of the small self or ego center that's trying to be aware and trying to use attention, in a to calm your body, to another dimension of consciousness that is not the you that you thought. So the you, because that was a subject that's trying to get better, becomes an object.
Mhm.
Like, oh, that's part of, but then the psychology kicks in. Okay, but that's not nothing. It's not no self. Ultimately, it's part of me. It's the functioning manager part of me. Oh,
Mhm.
that's the manager. Oh, there's the manager. Oh, thank you so much for trying to help me. with this issue, but what are you worried about? What are you anxious about? Oh, well, it's not going to work out. What if it doesn't work out? I need to say, well, okay, tell me more. And then what would it be like if you could just be part of the team and didn't have to drive the vehicle? It could be a self-driving vehicle, and you could help, but you could rest or play until needed. And then that, ego that's even trying to be a spiritual ego or trying to be a, good ego can relax. And then some of the, traumatic parts can come up that have been hurt, shame-based parts. Some of the what's called protective parts, like, anger and rage and fear and terror and, like isolation, will come up, and you realize, oh, that's a part of me that wants to isolate, and that's a part of me that wants to fight, and that's a part of me that wants to flight. So you start to engage and not get identified, but not reject the normal human emotional system.
Great.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Michael.
Oh, I was just going to add on to what Locke was saying. The whole concept of spiritual bypassing, people who have spiritual practices, but I mean, you're filling in that gap, spiritual bypassing, spiritual practices, and you bypass the whole psychological aspect of yourself, and you kind of sweep the neuroses under the rug instead of trying to liberate them or bring light onto them.
Yeah. And if as long as we're having this discussion, I tend to be very precise. So I have 4 bypasses. So spiritual bypass is that one.
Mhm.
And then I call it the psychological underpass.
Oh,
People who just do psychological work all the time, but don't realize there's another dimension. Then they have the intellectual overpass. Those are people who read all the spiritual books and all the, and try to philosophically figure it all out with a very smart brain. And then I have the, the worldly cul-de-sac, where you kind of just try to, like, okay, well, if I do well and succeed and get all my ducks in a row and just show up and try my best and replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts, and you just kind of try to march on the best you can. So those are other bypasses.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a lot of what you're saying is moving from a dual consciousness to a non-dual consciousness.
That's right. Yes.
Where the dual consciousness is, here I am thinking, oh, gee, that's a nice shirt. Gee, I haven't seen her lately. I wonder if I'm, what I'm going to have for lunch. Gee, it's hot today. The constant to just being an experience. And words often get in the way.
Yes, words definitely get in the way. And that's that. So it is, and yet the felt sense experience is very particular. So the the map can use words, but then the experience is very
Yeah,
very direct. But yeah, that non-dual is a interesting word, because that's another, I use that sometimes as non-dual mindfulness. And there's kind of 2 schools of non-duality out there right now. One says, they both agree that duality tends to be, as you say, dividing the world into us and them, or me and the world, or right and wrong in terms of
object, yeah.
subject. But then the more Advaita non-dual says that this pure awareness, the awake awareness, is non-dual awareness. So it's not, so what it is not dualistic. It's pure awareness. It's just awake. But then the Buddhists say, no, there's still 2 things, because there's pure awareness and then there's everything else. So the unity of what's called same taste, of awareness that arises as energy, embodiment, and life, ultimate reality and relative reality, are not 2. And that's the non-dual that I'm more interested in. But it requires still getting to know this awake awareness or pure awareness, but only for a short time, only for, I say, 3 seconds to 3 minutes. You just need to unplug from conditioning into that which is already fully awake, rest as it, and then include everything, welcome everything. And, takes a little, it's not uh, easy, but it is simple. if you
Yeah.
if you have enough time, I can usually get, people to get a glimpse in a fairly short time, but it takes, a little container,
Mhm.
and then we go on to the next. But it, most of my time has been spent kind of reverse engineering a lot of these advanced practices from these traditions and trying to figure out, all right, what are they all trying to do, and which doorways and which types of people are these designed for. So let me see if I can make them more contemporary, simpler, and then I'm always getting feedback from students about, what would you call that? What do you what's that? Or what felt like it blocked you from getting there? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm putting in the chat box the link to your webpage. That's the link, also the link to your mobile site, your mobile app. Is that right?
Yeah, it's currently a mobile meditation platform that you can use on your computer or your phone, and it works like an app on your phone. You just have to go through the web browser.
Yeah.
It has like these daily glimpses, which are usually around 10 minutes a day, a new one each day. And then there's a community board. And then there's also an opportunity to join these peer groups that are like 4 to 6 people that meet online around the world, to kind of practice together. And then there's these in-depth courses. And I have like all the audio glimpses from my recent book up there in order, which Sounds True didn't create. So I thought I would create them and make them available. And the transcripts are there. So it's kind of an attempt to, and then a kind of intro course, and it's an attempt, and then some podcasts, some, or not podcasts, but dialogues with some other people. So it's like, like a podcast, but the goal is to make it easily accessible. Certainly I started during COVID to try to bring this to people at home or on the go.
I want to say, as we're 15 minutes before the end of the hour, if you're listening and you have questions for Loch, to either type it into the chat box, or there's a place for Q&A. You can click that and write a question there, and we will pose your question to our speaker. This is a webinar format, so you can't actually talk yourself, but you can write it into the chat box or the Q&A.
Yeah. So Loch, about the mobile platform, again, people could either connect through your webpage, or they can download it on their phone or device, right?
They can go through, through their computer or phone, but it will load and they'll be able to use it then on both.
Uh-huh.
It looks like an app on the phone. It looks like a website but you can listen to it and look. There's some videos, but mostly audio.
Yeah. And so that little exercise he did with us at the beginning with the glimpse, they could do on their own, and a daily glimpse.
Yeah. So there'll be ones like that that I do, like some like that. I'll break them down. Like here's a 3-minute version, a 6-minute version, a 10-minute version, and just kind of keep walking around through these different doors to get different styles. Another glimpse, I have people unhook awareness from thought and have like it actually feel your jaw from within, feel your throat from your throat, and then drop into your body. So you feel your body directly from within, and then drop into your heart space. So you're aware of your heart space, and now you're aware from your heart space. So those kind of, I'm like describing it kind of, but some people are like, whoa, what just happened? Like, but
Yeah,
they're,
that was going to be my next question, actually. What are some of the responses that happen to people in your workshops as they take these techniques and they're exposed to them perhaps for the first time?
yeah, I mean, yeah, over time, I had them on some other apps and people were writing like, oh my God, I've just been doing these 10 for a few weeks. My life has changed. And then, yeah, I just see like this aha, like, what? No, wait, oh, wow. I had one right before COVID that it's kind of a funny story that somebody who was like a longtime student, she was on like a second date and she asked the guy to come with her and he was like sitting in the back with his arms crossed like, okay, I got to get through this to keep going on the date. Like I was the entertainment as
Ah,
the mid evening part with somebody. And then all of a sudden he just went, what? Put his hand up. He said, this is how I feel when I go rock climbing. Like, but I just felt it here in the middle of New York City. Like, that's ridiculous. This is what I've always wanted.
uh-huh.
So it's that
Great.
kind of, because it is, for many people, it is just, the premise is there's this natural awake consciousness that's this far away. It's so close, but we don't know how to find it. And it's where we're looking from. So we don't turn around to be aware of it. And when you just have these pointers, it shows up because it's equally in everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Locke, in your first book, Shift into Freedom, you have a quote at the very beginning of the book from Albert Einstein that I want to read and have it speak about because it's very relevant to our challenging and turbulent times we live in. And the quote from Albert Einstein is, I'll read the last two sentences. It is that the true value of a human being is determined primarily by the measure and the sense in which they have attained liberation from the self. We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if humanity is to survive. So obviously you felt this quote from Einstein was relevant, start your first book. So what would you say is this new manner of thinking? And how does it tie into what you're talking about?
Yeah. So this is the, starts with non-thinking, starts with the source of intelligence, which isn't thought-based, but goes to this awake awareness-based consciousness, and then comes into what's called heart mind or compassionate awareness, that most of the spiritual traditions have talked about, the sacred heart or the wisdom mind, that is that sees the same and goes to what is, the word namaste means, I see that which is in me is the same as in you. I see that which is in you is the same as in me. So it's this way of perceiving that gets out of the dualistic us versus them mode and fear-based stress, and starts to not just be passive and sit in a cave or a monastery, but actually engages the creativity, intelligence, and compassion for each person to begin to do their small part and connect locally and act in whatever their interest and capacity is to be part of the solution.
Great, great. I think of people, I imagine people in your workshop sitting there going, are you not thinking what I'm not thinking?
That's great. I haven't heard that one. Can I use that
Yeah.
one?
Yeah. So in a way, awakening is, I mean, this is all innate in us already. So awakening is basically igniting what is in us, that creative potential, that flow state.
Yes. Yeah, that's really the key difference. To answer that first question, Anadea, about the difference between basic mindfulness, or what I call deliberate mindfulness, and effortless, is the premise in effortless is, well, the awakeness, the freedom, the love you're seeking is already here.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be created or developed or attained or earned. It just has to be recognized, realized, embodied, and lived from. So
Well,
that, yeah.
yeah, it's much like the stars. The stars are shining and we see them at night, but they're shining all day. And you
Yes.
can't see them because there's so much interference. When you clear out the interference, then what is already there comes up. And to me, meditation is a way of clearing out the interference of my busy thinking, scurrying mind. And then when I can clear out that interference, that reality just as it is there in its shining glory.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And then-
And here and talking about awakening, which is which would lead to human evolution. What might you think could be? This is a big question, big picture question. Could be the next step in human development and human evolution.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think it is likely to be, small groups at a time. There's one period in this North Indian tradition called Mahamudra, which is before the Tibetans learned this system, where apparently there were whole villages and cities where people were teaching this to each other, like the fishmonger and the seamstress and the householders were like, look, check this out. Wow, that's good. And there was a whole, kind of learning of how to be awake. And there's just a natural loving kindness that comes from it, and not because there's a non-fear and non-worry and a non-shame. So you feel this dropping away, and then new, as you say, Michael, creative potential comes forward. And so you can't say like, it will look, people will do this or that. You'll just, once you do it, you don't know what people are going to create new solutions, hopefully by finding their own motivation from this motivation of life. Let's make life thrive. What are we doing? We're all together here.
Yeah, yeah. So our podcast that we do is called Voices for the Future, and we interview people to talk about their view of a positive future where we're going, something that we really need to see right now as everyone looks at how awful so many things are. What would you say about that from this perspective?
Yeah. So like as I was saying, I think it is the next natural stage of human development. So from the inner and the personal to the interpersonal and the community and the governmental and the nation and the world, and the is to to make this kind of adult learning, to say like, okay, we haven't stopped growing from having a very smart mind trying to figure things out and how to get along. Let's continue to grow up and wake up and see whether there isn't already an available ability to find that compassionate intelligence that we can live from. So I think the future could be that, and how it will happen, it's hard to say. Whether it'll happen like the 100th monkey theory or something, like if enough people awaken, then they'll start teaching each other, or there'll be some
Critical mass. Yeah.
critical mass of some sort. But I think we've got to start from the top down and the bottom up, and this is more bottom up, one individual sharing it with others, and in a way, and science comes back, because this is a non-denominational, non-guru human being lineage. This is about we're all the same. What do you think? How do you get, what works for you? There's certain principles that, this is saying are valuable or, ancient, but how you get there, and there's no, hierarchy or religion created from it. It's a democratic, but, also there's learners and teachers and within it.
At the John Lennon song, imagine no religion. I wonder if you can.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. How do we reach the people that, seem to need it the most? The people that are shooting up out of race, shooting people from racist ideology in Buffalo, or, all the things we're reading on the news. How do we reach those people that seem farthest away from this kind of consciousness?
I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, the poor, young person who, was isolated and then got involved with, went down the rabbit hole of reading and hearing all this stuff, just took him over, and he just started seeing reality through it. So it's kind of a metaphor for the extreme version of, trying to just wrap our mind in this dualistic vision of right and wrong. So, trying to make it a little more normal. I think the deliberate mindfulness movement going into schools is a great thing, that it starts to become kind of more culturally normative, that people are meditating and starting to be open and doing some healing work. Trauma healing is very important. It's becoming a big topic too, because that repressed trauma gets people to act out. So those two lines, meditation and psychology, and are coming together, that I hope can help reach people.
Yeah, there's so many people who are hurting. I mean, I don't know if you still have an active practice in psychotherapy, Loch, but between opioids and the ways people numb themselves and try to check out, and like this person, young man, and who went to Buffalo, just go down a rabbit hole and just whatever pain and trauma they've had in their background to lead them to such a dark act. Yeah. But that is the $64,000 question, because it's not even just people like that who do such heinous things, but the people at the wealth level who are just their narcissistic urges to accumulate more wealth, while the rest of society is just split, and so much wealth inequality.
Yeah, I mean, in one way, like some of my practices mainly have been in New York, though I travel around. So I worked in high schools in New York and gave a lot of free events. But it's interesting also, as you mentioned, that from the meditation apps, I started to get all these young CEOs and COOs of these tech companies, and people like, oh, I've tried to meditate, I couldn't meditate, but like your method, it's like unbelievable. I'm just like treating my wife totally differently, and I'm like relaxing at work, and so it's interesting that there's a generation of these very driven, very successful, very smart people who are now, because it's on the cultural map, they're leaders in their community, but they're looking for something else, and it's now becoming available. So it can be, again, from kind of, it's all democratic, but from people who are leaders and people who have less resources, we can kind of come in at each of those doors.
And once again, you can type questions into the chat box or into the Q&A box for Loch. And before we wind up the hour.
There's, I think so many people, especially in the US, are realizing this push, that personal push to, are seeing success as having more
Hmm.
is just not the answer, and its fulfillment doesn't come that way. And success is really, that's the wrong way to define success.
Yeah.
And it's really that inner life, that rich inner life. And you know, work, as you said, working with CEOs and COOs, they're epitomes of that. They've been driven to that level of success.
Yeah, and these people are like, yeah, I'm the CEO of this tech company. I'm 26, and I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah.
because they've been that generation was, driven to, get the grades, get the SATs, get into the schools, get the, start your own entrepreneurship early, and they're all, going. But then, there's enough cultural openness to say, well, what else is there, to succeed at? And then we throw meditation. Well, succeed at meditation effortlessly. Oh, wait a minute, what? And then it's like, whoa,
Yeah, that's fascinating. But yeah, to it's a different type of success. It's just
yeah,
Yeah,
nothing.
a different type of success, a lot easier. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
but not so outwardly rewarded. The culture rewards that outward success, and many of us get caught up in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not seeing any questions come in. Are you, Michael?
No, nothing coming in. That doesn't mean we haven't stimulated people. There's this is stuff for people to kind of
Yeah.
take in within to, yeah. And we have yeah, from Nina. She asks, I think I'm in a flow state more than I recognize.
Oh,
How does your technique help me realize awakening?
yeah. Yeah. So that's a great question. So one of the things I often start an event with by saying, in giving the map and then talking about flow state, is saying, like, what do you do that you love in your free time? And then people, I dancing, I do music, I do walk the dog, I go gardening, I go walking in nature. I said, what if you did that not for the thing itself, but to get into a flow state, to drop out of your mind and feel interconnected? Because the one who goes and, plays music, and another one who gardens, the one who gardens isn't going to get there through, doesn't like playing music, and, but they both feel the same. Because so recognizing when whatever doorway you currently find in your free time that brings you, drops you out of your head into being embodied and interconnected and active with your eyes open in some activity, start to notice that it's not just the activity. It's not about the person, place, thing, or activity that is bringing you there. It's because it's already within you. And whatever that is that you've done enough times will just open the door. So then as you're doing that, just start to feel not only outward toward the activity, like walking in the woods, but start to also feel in, and almost feel the awareness that has your back. So there's almost this panoramic feeling of having dropped. What is it like when you're not analyzing, judging, uh, worrying, fearing? What's this like? Who am I? What does this feel like? Who's this all appearing to? So you start to recognize that, and then you do these glimpses, and you'll see that you get into that same feeling. The feeling is the same as when you're doing this activity.
Yeah.
Great answer.
We have a question from the Q&A box from Judy. And Judy asks, or says, comment, just want to say that in my experience of teaching yoga, that opening to the back body is one of the most awakening dimensions. It is a profound offering in a deep yoga practice.
Yes. Yeah. So this is a secret pointer, and opening to the back body will be very relaxing, but I would ask her if I was in dialogue, is it really that they're opening to the back body, or are they actually opening from the back body to the awareness that has their back? In other words, it's when you go not only within, but open up through the door of the heart. And because most of our senses are this way, eyes, nose, and we're looking, especially because we're very eye conscious. And when you try to meditate, you're closing your eyes, but you're still in the front. And when you feel your emotional heart, it's in the front. And even the chakras are kind of within. But one of the best doors to awake awareness is, drop, like sometimes I say, feel like you're taking off a hood, and then drop your awareness to the awareness that's behind you until you find that awareness that's already awake without your help. And then, like an ocean of awareness, feel that it's arising as your body and looking out of the eyes of your heart. So that doorway, so the key for the yoga teachers, which have had many, is just to say, well, bring them to the back body, but then ask them to open beyond the body and then come back.
One of my yoga teachers had always taught that the front body was the individual and the back body was the universal.
Yeah, beautiful.
Huh.
Some classic, teaching there.
Yeah. So a lot of your teaching, would you say, Locke, is heart-centered? Then
Yeah, heart, mind. There's something, whatever you want to call that, that's not head, mind. It's not emotional heart. It's wisdom mind, heart mind, embodied mind, full body mind. Dan Siegel calls it interpersonal neurobiology, which is basically that your brain is not just in your head, it actually is your whole nervous system that goes down through your body. So you're just saying, okay, well, a lot of the senses are here, and the eyes and the ears seem to point to a local center. But if you can drop and open to this, what's called, when people say, it's me, it's I, this feeling, that opens you up and takes you out of the chattering mind into, a more a different view. And the key is to experiment. And so I have a bunch of little glimpses. The main one is this dropping from head space to heart space, and then literally being aware of it and from it, and then actually going back through the door of the heart to kind of this boundless heart, or open heart, open mind, and then feeling connection to everyone and everything, so that your eyes are like a periscope and they're coming down to the you're receiving. Because that's one of the other pointers I do a lot with, is that we look as if our eyes are going out, but eyes actually, light reflects off of objects and comes to your eyes. So if you can, hearing is receiving and actually seeing is receiving. If you can kind of rest back, all of a sudden, just by doing these little fine tunings of the human consciousness, it starts to like go, oh, let's upgrade, like.
Yeah. I don't see any other questions. Maybe we should begin to wrap it up. Do you have any final little pearls of wisdom that, a favorite saying or something that you want to drop on us?
I think that that awakening is learnable and accessible and teachable, and that it's equally available for each of us, within each of us, and that there are ways that you can start with whatever form of flow or exercise or meditation or yoga, but then just to encourage you to be curious about the little subtler next level of awareness-based embodied consciousness that you experience during flow, and see whether you can return to it intentionally, not just as a calm, quiet, thought free, but as an active, joyous and compassionate way of being, to which all other states can come and go.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm sorry we're doing this on Zoom and you're not live with all of us, because I could see how the direct experience would just be so profound. But thank you, Locke, for emphasizing the aspect of awakening.
Yes, you're so welcome. Yeah. And to make it, just less about enlightenment with a T, that just it's an unfolding process.
Yeah. And for people who get your book, The Way of Effortless Mindfulness, they can learn a lot of what you're talking about and more.
Yeah, and certainly the experiential version on the website and the phone is a way to kind of find your own experiential door.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing your pearls of wisdom with us. And this is Loch Kelly, and we put into the chat the way to find him, follow up. Loch Kelly, LOCHKELLY.org. And this is Voices for the Future. And next we have Gary Malkin in July, beautiful musician, who will talk about the unity of sound and vibration and how that contributes to our transformation.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Locke. Pleasure. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Loch.
Yeah.
We'll see you at the EL Advance.
Yeah.
See you there.
Okay.
Ciao.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.